Down in Florida, a pretty standard criminal fraud case took a really bizarre and honestly kind of alarming turn. This wasn't just about the defendant anymore. Suddenly, it was about the judge on the bench and a private citizen who found his sealed past, his entire life basically, put on blast for the whole world to see. This is the story of what happens when the scales of justice feel like they're tipping in the wrong direction.
And this, right here, is the question that's at the absolute heart of our story. It comes from a legal petition, and it's a bombshell. It challenges the very power of a judge. And, it makes you ask, who holds them accountable when they're the ones being accused of breaking the rules?
And believe me, the stakes here are incredibly high. We're not talking about simple courtroom mistakes. The allegations are that a judge trampled on some of our most basic constitutional rights. We're talking First Amendment, Fourth Amendment, the whole thing.
So, how in the world did we get here? Well, it all kicked off with an absolutely explosive accusation, and not from the person you'd expect. It came from a private citizen who wasn't even on trial. This is what makes this whole situation so unusual. This guy, Rusty Miller, was just a friend of the defendant. He wasn't a lawyer, not a witness, not involved in the case at all. He filed what's called a petition, which is basically a formal request to a higher court saying, hey, you guys need to step in here and fix this because the judge down here is way out of line.
So, this petition lays out a pretty shocking list of accusations against the judge, Diego Madrigal. It claims he publicly humiliated Miller, illegally read his sealed criminal history out loud in open court for everyone to hear, shredded his constitutional rights, and even tried to intimidate him. These are the charges that really set this whole legal firestorm in motion.
Okay, so before all the drama with the judge, there was the criminal case that started it all. The state versus Kelly Lynch. This is the backdrop for everything that went down.
So these were the official charges against Kelly Lynch. The police report described a pretty sophisticated plan to defraud a car dealership out of a car worth more than 50 grand. We're talking serious stuff here.
The arrest report lays it all out. Lynch allegedly walked into a dealership with a fake Texas ID and started filling out all the paperwork to buy a car. But something tipped off the staff. They got suspicious and they called the cops. A serious crime with some pretty serious consequences.
All right, now we get to the official court transcripts. And this is where a totally standard sentencing hearing just goes completely off the rails. You'll see the judge's focus shifts away from the defendant and onto a man who wasn't even there, a guy he calls this knucklehead named Rusty.
You can just feel the frustration coming off the page, right? But what's wild is that instead of focusing on the defendant or her lawyer, the judge zeroes in on Rusty Miller, who isn't even in the room, calls him a knucklehead, and basically blames him for holding up the case.
And he just keeps going. He's talking to the defendant, but it's all about her friend. He paints this picture of Miller just abandoning her while she's in jail, saying his advice is terrible. I mean, it's super personal, and according to the petition, a completely inappropriate warning to be coming from the judge's bench.
And then this. The transcript literally records a moment of just pure rage. The judge allegedly screams at the defendant. It's a shocking moment that really makes you question the kind of temperament and atmosphere in that courtroom.
And this right here, this is the moment that changes everything. The judge starts reading this long list of old charges, and the petition claims these charges were from Rusty Miller's sealed criminal history. Sealed records are protected for a reason, so people can move on with their lives. For a judge to allegedly read them into the public record, for someone who isn't even part of the case, that's a massive breach of privacy and trust.
See, a judge's behavior isn't just about their personality. They're governed by a really strict set of ethical rules. These rules are there to make sure everything is fair, impartial, and that the public can actually trust the justice system.
So this is really the core of Miller's whole complaint. On the left, you've got the official rules for judges in Florida. Be patient, be dignified, be unbiased. And on the right, you've got what the judge allegedly said and did, straight from the court transcripts. The difference is pretty stark, and it's the whole basis for the argument that this was a huge violation of judicial ethics.
So out of this one single courtroom drama, you end up with two completely different paths of justice. One case was ending, but a brand new one was just getting started for the man who was supposed to be in the shadows.
For the original defendant, Kelly Lynch, her time in the court system was finally over. After all the delays and all the drama, she was sentenced to 5 years of supervised probation.
So let's just break it down. Kelly Lynch's case is closed.
Done. But for Rusty Miller, the non-party who got dragged into the spotlight, a whole new case is just getting started. A case where he's the one claiming his rights were violated by the very judge who's supposed to protect them.
And that's pretty much where things are right now. The criminal case is over, but that petition filed by Rusty Miller has cracked open a much bigger, much more important question. What happens when a judge is the one accused of misconduct? I mean, who judges the judge?
And it's a question that goes way beyond this one case in Florida, right? It really tests the checks and balances of our entire legal system. It leaves all of us wondering, in the end, who's guarding the guardians?